Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company and the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning.
Zane has a prior commitment this morning, so Mark again is joining us, and we're fully prepared to answer your questions, present some news items, share our opinions on those items, and so again, feel free to ask questions. Let us know where you're coming in from, and we'll try to entertain all the questions as they come in. The image that you see behind us, we usually start with that. It's one of our traditions. We pick an unusual image from the years of photography that I've been involved in. This is actually a church in a small village in the Black Forest where my uncle was born. It's a town called Cher, and it has a population of only 2,512. Now you would think that with a small village like that there wouldn't be much going on there, but let me just show you how significant even small villages oftentimes are in Europe. So this little town has a castle. It was sold in the 1970s for $12,000. Can you believe that? Somebody actually grabbed up a castle, right? Needed enormous amounts of maintenance, of course, because these things are hundreds of years old, I think 900 years or something. It also had a brewery, Goetz Brewery, which was shut down about 20 years ago or so. It was no longer economically feasible to continue to run it, but there was a brewery in town. We've got a church in town here. And the other thing that makes this a noteworthy little village is a river runs through here, which is one of the three most important rivers in Europe, the Danube. By the time it gets here, it's probably only 100 feet wide or so. But there's a lot of history with the Danube. The Danube, by the way, is a river that actually runs 1,771 miles. It starts at the Black Sea, which is where a lot of turmoil is going on now, and it goes through 9 different countries, eventually ending up there in this little village in my uncle's hometown. So this church is very small, but it's extraordinarily well taken care of. It went through a renovation about 5 years ago. And again, like most things in Europe, they're very old. This is hundreds of years old, and of course, beautiful and well kept. So enjoy the background image. Looks like we've got an Instagram question coming in from Bambi Like Life _Yiying. Never seen countdown on Instagram Live. Cool. Okay. That's part of what we do. And please send us your questions. Let us know where you're coming in from. It's always fascinating to our viewers what kind of reach this podcast or these podcasts have. And again, from Bambi Like Life, he or she is saying, nice green screen setup coming from the Netherlands. Doesn't have any questions yet, but hang in there, Bambi Life and Bambi Bike Life. And as the content evolves, maybe you'll have some questions and we'll try to answer them. Okay, so let's get into the news items. I'm going to recommend you to a website that I think anyone that's interested in electric vehicles would enjoy. It is a website called TeslaTap, all one word. And it was a website that was created by a very passionate, dedicated gentleman by the name of Frank Van Gilloway, who also wrote a book on Tesla, by the way. He spends an enormous amount of time on this website dealing with questions and issues about originally Teslas and now EVs in general. But one of the things that I pulled out of his website, and I wanted to give him proper credit for this, he talks about charging in an electric vehicle and vampire drain. Vampire drain is something that occurs if you're not using your car that you have to be cognizant of. So if you take your Model S and you're low on mileage down to the airport and you're going to be gone a couple of weeks and you park it, you need to be aware that there's a certain amount of drain that occurs from just keeping the car alive. You want to avoid special climate modes because those can drain up to 30 miles a day, 22 to 32 miles per day actually. Preconditioning is something else that you'll want to turn off or make sure is off. Leaving your door slightly ajar is also something you don't want to do because it keeps the systems on, like climate control. Sentry mode, That also draws quite a bit of current. And if you have the cell phone application to link to your car, the recommendation he makes is check your car frequently via your Tesla phone app, and it will wake the car up for 10 minutes. Just don't do it too often because it starts all of the juices running again. And then downloading maps takes a lot of bandwidth and also current, or drains the battery a bit. So there's some things that you can do to eliminate, and you're going to see about 1 to 3 miles per day phantom drain if you have all of these other things turned off.
You know, one of the things that he also mentioned that was a light bulb moment for me, in all honesty, was the fact that when your battery is warm, it has more range than when it's cool. And when your battery cools down, it loses range as well. It's like a vampire draw. Mm-hmm. I remember after first getting my Model S and driving it over to Los Angeles for a trip, left it for 3 days in a parking garage. When I left it, it had 49 miles. When I got back to it, it had 16. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get to a charger?
Is that charger at least less than 16 miles away?
Yes,
a concern.
exactly.
And then you get range anxiety, yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And in this case, that's what it was, is that I had been driving all day to get there. My battery was warm, and it had all that extra range after the battery cooled off, because it was, you know, in the mid 50s to upper 60s in Los Angeles at the time. The car lost some of that range due to the battery cooling off and not being able to keep mm-hmm. going. So, you know, good end of the story obviously is good. We were able to find a charger about 7 miles away and get going.
Mm-hmm. He talks also about how to choose a battery for a Tesla if you're purchasing the Tesla. And he said the easy choices are pick the smallest battery if your budget is already pushed to the limit for the base car. Pick the largest battery if the cost is unimportant to you. And then pick the largest battery if the best performance is important to you. Performance models do have a little less range than non-performance models with the same size battery. So again, I encourage you to check out his website. It's very informative. There are many more topics besides the one that we covered this morning. It is TeslaTap, all one word, .com. And Frank Von Gilloway is the creator of this wonderful EV site.
Thanks for the great resource, Pete. You know, we have a couple of questions now. First, Handy Andy 785 asked us, what cult is this? I don't know that this is a cult of any kind. It's a Christian church in the background.
I responded to him on TikTok. I said, this is the best cult.
Yes,
okay,
that's true.
It's the good one.
We should probably describe the picture again. We might have had some lay people coming in. This is a small church in my uncle's hometown in the Black Forest, population 2,500. It sports the Danube running through town, a castle, used to have a brewery, and of course this wonderful church.
I'm sorry, it was this piece was cut off. This individual was actually on TikTok, so he was talking about the show. He can't see the green screen.
Oh, he can't see the green.
Yeah,
well, then what cult is this?
True.
Well, we've been accused of a number of things that were aliens, that were actually AI, and that's why we wear the glasses, because the lasers would blind our audience. And again, we say this often. We will eventually do a reveal as to why there are usually sunglasses involved in Gruber video productions, but we're not ready to reveal that yet. So in the meantime, put on your own sunglasses, join us, and let's have some fun.
On YouTube, Thomas Curtis, who is watching from New Zealand, comments that he loves our work. Thank you, Thomas, and welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you, Thomas. And then YouTube, Karen B. She says, I'm new to Gruber. She has a 2016 Model S in San Diego. Wonderful place. One of our favorite things to do there, by the way, is to go to Pacific Beach. We stay at a little hotel there called the Pacific View Inn. It was a dive many years ago. It was where all of the spring break, college kids would go. It was inexpensive, but my God, you walk out and within 200 feet, you're on the beach.
Oh, that's so amazing.
And then you have Konos down the way there for breakfasts, and and the boardwalk, which runs, for miles, and it's just a wonderful place to be. Really enjoy San Diego. Instagram, Ricky XC1. will you be doing any work on Hyliion trucks? You know, we get asked that a lot regarding working on other EVs, and we're so laser focused at this point on Tesla Roadsters and the other Tesla vehicles, we have not dived into the other types of EVs that we could be working on. But there will hopefully be independent shops like us that will pick up the slack.
And on YouTube, Nix TX, now that's what cool is, sunglasses inside.
Oh, there's somebody that watched the Blues Brothers movies.
That's right.
He understands. Thank you.
And on TikTok, Fisherman, the sunglass wearing studs, love the cars.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we have a picture that we can pop up there. Can we pop up that Zoox vehicle? Earlier this week, Amazon's autonomous tech company, who now owns Zoox, announced they deployed the world's first purpose-built robo-taxi on open public roads with passengers. Zoox, by the way, was one of those startups that occurred as Tesla was starting to gain momentum. Some of the Tesla people went to this company, so there was a brain drain, and they came up with this really cool concept vehicle. This vehicle lacks a steering wheel, brake pedal, and other controls that human drivers need, so it is fully autonomous. And even if you wanted to, you could not pilot this or drive this. For now, it says, Zoox uses a single robo-taxi traveling 1 mile on a public route between the company's 2 main office buildings, carrying up to 4 people at a time with a top speed of 35 miles per hour. And it is capable of handling left and right-hand turns, bidirectional turns, traffic lights, cyclists, pedestrians, vehicles, mannequins, well, I had to throw that in there, sorry, and other road agents on this route. The employee shuttle service will be offered exclusively to all Zoox full-time employees, and this Amazon-owned company plans to offer robo-taxi rides to the general public after it secures additional government clearances. And we're grateful that the government is stepping in here and making sure that this is completely safe and that it is allowed on the roadways without safety issues.
By all means, it reminds me, goodness, and I'm dating myself here, probably between 25 and 30 years ago, back in the Intel 80486 processor times. Even at that point, there were cars that were able to go as much as 2 or 3 miles an hour down, test tracks and stuff. So it's not like we don't have the processing power to be able to do something like that with our computers nowadays.
Okay, we had a question there earlier. There it is. YouTube, Karen B. How are you, Karen? You've been with us before. Welcome back. She says, I want to replace my 2016 75 kW battery with a 90, and I'm assuming this is a Model S. Can we talk about this? Most certainly. We asked Tesla about this, and we got an answer from them all the way up to corporate, actually. Tesla recommends and has a solution for people that want to upgrade their smaller battery packs from 40, 60, 70, 80, 85, up to 90, with a replacement 90 kW battery pack. It's about $22,000. And of course, everybody asks, well, I want a 100 kW pack. They were very specific about this and gave us a lot of detail, which, by the way, we did a video with. So if you want more detail to answer this question, check out our YouTube channel, and you'll see an upgrade video about the Tesla Model S upgrade path. The problem with the 100 kW pack was that it is a heavier pack, and there are design changes in the Model S that go along with putting a 100 kW pack in the car, which includes seat placement, airbag discharge timing, and certain firmware issues that need to be altered in order to accommodate, and suspension changes to accommodate this heavier battery pack. So, although you could probably find a backyard mechanic that might shoehorn a 100 kW pack into your Model S, be prepared, because that car will no longer be allowed in service centers. It voids any kind of warranties, of course, and Tesla does not recommend the 100 kW in the smaller version cars. So it's not backward compatible, in other words.
Right, but the 90 kW does end up being fine for the cars. So for her to want to upgrade from a 75 to a 90 is something that could be done.
Mm-hmm.
On YouTube Shorts, Secure Folder has asked, if you mount a battery pack on top of a battery pack and charge one as you turn the car with the pack, and then switch to the charged pack every time you drive, how close to self-charging are we?
Well, of course, you're going to have some drain, and both batteries will eventually expire.
Yes.
But that would be a novel way to get some self-charging, wouldn't it?
It might be a novel way to get some self-charging. You're going to have, obviously, the weight issues as well. They're going to inhibit your car's ability to move. It's going to take more energy, actually, to move 2,000-pound battery packs than it is to move 1,000-pound battery pack. We also have self-charging that goes on inside the existing battery packs. I'm not sure if it would be, how much more efficient it would be to be able to self-charge.
Sure. A lot of integration issues too. The firmware, how does it deal with two batteries? What happens with the switching? But I think the main barrier to this is, where are we going to put the battery? It already takes up the entire floorboard, and stacking two of them on top of each other suddenly raises the car 8 inches.
Well, and these battery packs are not completely flat. Mm-hmm. At the front end of the battery pack, there's this 16 inches by about 3 feet wide where
penthouse.
They have the penthouse area where there are actually 2 sheets stacked, or two modules stacked on top of one another on the Model S battery pack. So that makes that battery pack not completely flat, and that would be an issue as well.
One of the things that I think technology is intriguing, or at least creating some curiosity about, is higher density photovoltaic capabilities, so that a panel on top of the car actually becomes so potent and powerful that it can charge those batteries, like Solo is doing, for example, with their tri-wheeler. So that's the future, and I will bank on that.
Fusion. I'm going to say
Fusion.
I'm always going to say fusion. I'm throwing that in there every chance I get. Cult of fusion, that's what we are.
So Instagram, Altamirano_Nico. Hi from Argentina. Welcome. Welcome to our podcast.
And on Instagram, Berm Spots. Love Mr. Gruber. Question. Do you have a take on graphene as a component of battery production?
Yes, welcome, by the way. We were approached by a manufacturer about half a year ago, summer of last year, I think, and they realized that we had test mules. We have a lot of Model S's, for example. They made us an offer. They said, we are a graphene battery pouch manufacturer, and what we would like to do is partner with you guys to create a proof of concept vehicle that we can take graphene pouch batteries, insert them in a Tesla Model S tub, and prove that this is a better technology. And they sent us videos. For example, one of the videos was, this graphene technology is not flammable like the lithium-ion batteries are, or as volatile. And one of the things they showed was a graphene battery mounted at a gun range on a plywood stand, and somebody standing back there 50 feet away with a 9mm pistol firing rounds into this graphene pouch battery with a meter connected to it showing its degradation. And what was amazing was, even riddled with holes, it was still providing voltage, and it didn't catch on fire.
Wow.
So we were intrigued. We did some engineering. We worked on the integration, and we thought we had a solution because we have, we had an empty Model S battery tub. It turns out that the geometry of these packs and the number that we would need to make this integration possible without enormous expense just wasn't there. And for the manufacturer to make pouch batteries now to the size that we need was also cost prohibitive. So for now, our project at least is on hold. But we found it a fascinating concept because at the time, doing the research, graphene technology is definitely one of the new emerging battery technologies that will eventually replace lithium-ion.
Yeah, the solid state batteries are definitely going to be the future of batteries. You're going to get energy density that you just don't have with the lithium ion batteries. In fact, the last time I guest hosted, we talked a little bit about the solid state batteries as opposed to the liquid electrolyte batteries like lithium ion, and how them not being flammable, them being a higher energy density, all these things, the fact that they don't degrade over time like the lithium ion batteries do. These are all things that portend a really, really bright future for solid-state batteries such as graphene.
One other thing real quick as well on that, guys. If anybody in our audience wants to go and check it out on YouTube, we did several videos on graphene then I think about a year ago. And then also that question there from Eric on YouTube about Waymo. We also have a video on Waymo and some of those companies that are similar to Zoox as well.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, we do have that Waymo video, and it will answer a lot more questions than we would ever be able to do in this session, in this podcast. TikTok, Smuggler, good morning. Welcome back, Smuggler.
And on YouTube, Eric Berman does ask specifically about Google's Waymo project, and do we have any thoughts on that? I know that Waymo actually does, in the Phoenix area, where we're located at, they run downtown Phoenix even.
Yeah, we see them on the roads here. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. Phoenix, the airport down in Tempe,
They've been here for like 10 years now.
They've been here for a long time.
We're one of their main test markets,
Test hubs.
And for the people who are not used to seeing a car on the road without a driver, it can be very unsettling.
Mm-hmm. So let me jump to a couple of news items. We've got some more questions streaming in. The thing I found fascinating was Tesla has a recall now, 363,000 vehicles equipped with full self-driving beta. And the NHTSA forced Tesla to do this recall. And Tesla did not agree with the regulator's analysis, but decided to voluntarily recall out of an abundance of caution. Now let me put this in perspective for a moment. Back in the day, when an auto manufacturer faced a recall, a 363,000 vehicle recall almost bankrupted a company, because every single one of those cars had to go to a service center. There had to be labor involved. It was downtime for the service center. They had to inject, all of this activity into an already existing bustling service center. What's amazing about this is this recall can be handled over the air. There is no service center visit necessary. The technology has taken us to a level where it's all software, exactly. And, that definitely was great news to Tesla, because they're going to be able to just simply tweak some software or some firmware and resolve this, this recall.
Do we know anything else about the tweaks that they're going to make to the full self-driving module?
Yes, the regulator's assertion is that the vehicle can act unsafe around intersections, such as traveling straight through an intersection while in a turn-only lane, entering a stop sign controlled intersection without coming to a complete stop. Well, that's perfectly normal. The guys that wrote this are Californians, and that's called a California stop, right? Okay, so I would have expected that. And then to change insufficient reaction to changes in posted speed limits. So those were the primary things that the NHTSA wanted Tesla to address with this recall.
One thing we want to make clear also, Pete, this is not like what anybody that saw those ads at the Super Bowl would have seen. This is much, much less severe than that.
And of course, that's still up to under investigation. And some serious questions. And that's the reason we didn't report much about it, was because the information related to these allegations by Dan Dowd are murky at this point. And a lot of questions have been raised. The primary one was, if this car, this Model S, was actually traveling down the road and a mannequin, a childlike mannequin, was pulled out in front of the car, why didn't it react or stop? The video only shows the vehicle. It never shows the screen and proof that full self-driving is turned on at that point.
Yeah, it could be totally faked. We never
And
know.
so the claim is this is deceptive, and it's the second time that Dan has been involved and been challenged to provide the correct details in order to make his claim credible. So we're staying away from it at this point until more information becomes available.
Triple G from TikTok has commented that there should be no self-driving vehicles on the road ever. Who do you hold accountable?
Yeah, that's a great question, isn't it?
You know, that is a really great question. And, you know, several years ago here in Arizona, there was a self-driving vehicle that did not recognize a bicyclist walking, you know, in the roadway, not in a crosswalk, dark, and it was a terrible accident. And
I remember.
by the time the person who was monitoring the vehicle, because it was a beta test, saw the pedestrian, it was too late. So there's a lot of legal stuff that's going to have to be worked out about accountability for self-driving vehicles that still hasn't been yet.
And of course, once the technology improves to the level where there's a zero accident rate, then this will become a non-issue. But
Or when
Yeah.
everybody has them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, when all cars are driving themselves, it's going to be safer than a half and half mix or something, you know.
right, our expectation though is that machines can do a better job of driving than humans.
Yeah, that's our expectation anyway. We'll see if that happens. You know, in your article, there was one other thing mentioned that I read it and I shook my head. It said, you know, the NHTSA talking about how cars on full self-driving mode can be set to exceed the speed limit and needed to be able to be restricted so that they could only go the speed limit. I will tell you as a commuter, if I'm going down the freeway at the speed limit during rush hour, I'm going to get run over.
Yeah, you're going to be in an accident. Yeah.
I will be causing accidents as opposed to preventing them if I'm not going a little bit over the speed limit at whatever the traffic speed is.
And then you have avoidance issues. How many times, you know, would speeding up keep you out of an accident?
Absolutely.
A lot of things to solve here, but yeah, the technology is going to change whether we adopt it or not.
Yeah, it certainly will.
So YouTube, Steve Rose, welcome back, Steve. His question is, are adapters available for commercial J1772 to use with Tesla charging stations? With a Roadster, there's a manufacturer, Henry Sharp, back in New Hampshire? I think New Hampshire, yeah. Connecticut, sorry. He began making a Roadster converter for the J1772. The Roadster has a proprietary charge connector on it. No longer in production. It was, you know, one of the first proof of concept vehicles, and it didn't become the standard. So he makes an adapter that allows you to use either J1772 with the Roadster or the new Tesla Trident connector. And then for the later model Teslas, there is a J1772 adapter made by Electron, which allows you to go from 1772 to the Trident connector. We use those all the time here with our chargers because our utility-provided chargers are 1772, and we've got Teslas.
You know, and that question, though, is really relevant considering the news items this last week where Tesla is announcing that they're going to open up their charging stations to other vehicle manufacturers. So now do we have the reverse, where you have a Trident plug that can go into a J1772 receptacle?
Right.
I have to admit, for myself, I don't know if that's the case yet. I haven't seen any of those type of adapters as of yet. Have you?
It sounds like a market opportunity. I have not seen them, but yeah, it definitely seems like it will be a need. And of course, we're all hoping that at some point in time, true standardization will take place and we'll get rid of all of the variables, except for Roadster, which isn't going to change.
Right, of course.
All right.
On TikTok, Random42 says, cool sunglasses. Thank you, Random42.
Let's jump to TikTok Smuggler then. He says, how are you, by the way? Pete, how many different pairs of sunglasses do you own? You know, I don't have a lot. Probably 4 or 5 maybe. And they're certainly not very expensive. We are going to start a new podcast, by the way, for our Power Services division within the next month or so. And the presenter is a female by the name of Eileen who works in our Power Services division. And she's a very stylish young lady. And one of her conditions for joining this podcast was that we create a budget for her sunglasses. And I figured, not a big deal, some Oakleys, maybe 20, 30 bucks tops. She says, oh, no, I need Gucci's, and they cost $800. So we're still working through that hurdle at this point to make sure that we're able to satisfy her requirements and her needs without breaking the bank.
Tom Reed on TikTok asks, what is a Tesla valve?
I don't know. Was it something that we presented earlier, perhaps, and there's a question about that? Or it looks like we have the ability to bring up websites. Let's try that.
Yeah, no, I don't think this has anything to do with the Tesla.
Okay.
Just this was a question that's been asked before. It seems to be some sort of flow valve.
Okay, all right.
So this isn't something that has to do with the Tesla company, as opposed to Nikola Tesla, something else named after Nikola Tesla that doesn't have anything to do with the car company itself.
Well, we'll have to find out more about it. Eric Berman from TikTok, he thanks us for that answer. Okay, well, let me jump into another news item. If we can bring up that picture from Alauda Aeronautics that unveiled the Airspeeder Mk4 in Southern Australia. This thing is built in Adelaide, Southern Australia, and from a distance here, it looks like a Formula One car, but you know what? This is an eVTOL aircraft. So an EV, vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, and it was designed as a race vehicle or to do airspeeder racing. Its top speed is 225 miles an hour, and it can reach that within 30 seconds. But what's interesting about this, it's actually a hybrid, not the type that you would normally associate with hybrids, which is ICE engine, but a EV combined with a
turbine?
Turbine? Well, in fact, let me read it to you here.
Yes.
Let's see. With sophisticated propulsion systems, it will take off, blah, 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 okay, and it'll cruise 188 miles. It is intended for racing primarily. It has a 1,340 horsepower turbo generator, and it's a combination of hydrogen and EV. So hydrogen apparently is used as the fuel for the generator that generates the electricity. So I'm not sure how that can be efficient, but I thought we'd throw it up since it does have some EV component in it. And those round things that you see there definitely look like a drone, but those will most likely rotate once the vehicle is airborne and then provide lateral propulsion rather than horizontal or vertical propulsion.
That is something that I would absolutely love to see streaking through the air at some point.
Yeah. You know, this whole electric airplane concept or airworthy cars is beginning to take on a momentum. We're seeing more and more of that each week with other companies that are focused on developing this type of product. Looks like the questions are starting to stream in. YouTube, Eli DeChamp. What if General Motors never destroyed the EV1? Would Tesla ever exist? Well, there's a good philosophical question. For those of you unfamiliar, GM in 1995 came out with an EV1 electric vehicle. It was a little sedan. They built under 2,000 of them, 1,500 or so, I think. And they would only lease them for whatever reason. Liability, we're not sure yet. And the customers that ended up getting them, and one of them is here in Phoenix, by the way, John Martinson, who's very active in the EV community. In fact, in a seminar I was with him at Scottsdale Community last week, he said he's owned 16 EVs since they came out, and starting with the EV1. So after a year and a half, GM decided we're going to scrap these EV1 electric vehicles, and the owners were furious. They wanted to keep them, they wanted to buy them, they wanted to drive them, and GM was adamant. Only a couple, 3 survived, and they typically went to either universities or museums or schools. So 3, I think, are left. So the question is, had General Motors not taken the position of scrapping these and then making a public statement at the time, the CEO at the time basically said, there's no market for electric vehicles. That was a prophetic statement.
Yes.
That was like Ken Olsen with Digital Equipment saying, there's no market for PCs. They were building mainframes.
Yeah, there'll only be like 2,000 of them ever exist.
Right.
Sure.
What would happen? Well, most likely the EV revolution would have started much sooner, and it's questionable whether Tesla would be part of that, because there may have been other companies, including GM, that would have been the beneficiary of this rapid EV adoption rate, instead of being behind the curve at this point as badly as they are.
By all means. I know that the EV1 was really Elon Musk's inspiration for getting going, and for the people over at the engineering company. Eric Berman on YouTube asks if we can hear about DCFC in level 2, what it is and how it compares to level 2, costs, benefits, and a current conversation about it.
Eric, we're going to have to research that. I'm not versed on that, and it sounds like a great video for our team.
Yeah, we can look into that for sure.
Whenever we do videos, by the way, there's an enormous amount of research that results in order to make a meaningful video. So that seems like a good topic. TikTok Timo _123 from TikTok says the GMC Truck commercial implies that self-driving can overtake vehicles. Your thoughts? What do you think, Mark?
I'm suspicious, honestly. I saw that commercial during the Super Bowl as well. You know, the guy pulls his hands off, sits down, and the GMC goes, switches lanes, pulls around, comes back. Technically, I'm sure that it's possible. The computing power is absolutely there. In reality, I think I'm with that earlier comment from TikTok, when we were talking about the Waymo cars. And if you could pull that up, I think it was Tom Reed talking about the corporations are going to have to be liable if something happens.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh. Yeah, it's Tom Reed. The corporations are going to be legally responsible. Yeah,
Would they,
okay.
though, or would they,
It may
with the
be
software?
possible that a GMC could actually do that. I think I'd want to see it in person, and I think I'd want to be on the side of the road far away when I'm saying it. I'm just a little nervous about it still. Not that I don't like GMC, because I have a Yukon myself as one of my cars. Just that that's very new technology.
Looks like we have a YouTube question from Scott Gruber. That's a good last name, by the way. He says, howdy, would you welcome more EVs from other countries? Can you guys put that up just a little bit? It's cut off. There we go. Yeah. Would you welcome more EVs from other country car companies, or is there a good reason why we don't see them here in the U.S.? I think the fundamental reason is we have such strict requirements to allow anything on the roadways. Yeah. They have to jump through so many hoops, and which prevents a lot of inexpensive vehicles hitting this country. China, for example, in this country, the feeling is that once we get an electric vehicle that is less expensive than an ICE vehicle, that the adoption rate will begin to soar exponentially. Well, China has a lot of those vehicles, but they're not deemed roadworthy by the U.S. regulators yet. So it'll happen eventually.
I do think it'll happen eventually as well. I think there are a lot of really good quality car makers out there worldwide. And I think that the tariffs that are in between places like China and the U.S. have an awful lot to do with this. I know that Mexico similarly has a lot of tariffs. You cannot bring a Mexican-made Ford vehicle or General Motors vehicle into the U.S. without paying a huge tariff. Part of it's because Ford and General Motors have vehicles that cost only about half as much as what they cost here in the U.S. So the tariff bumps that half up to what the U.S. retail is.
So this might be a good time to throw up that e-bike picture, if you guys could put that up. Speaking of tariffs, speaking of the government getting involved, taxing, in France, electric bicycles and scooters are attractive in actually any country because it reduces your carbon footprint tremendously. The battery in this is infinitely smaller. it's far lower entry point to buy something like this and get alternative transportation. What they're now doing in France is there's a bill that was recently filed which aims to make registration of e-bikes and scooters and other lightweight vehicles mandatory. Now, bills of this nature surface often, they say, and although none of them have ever really gained traction. But if you think about it, this is not a human-powered effort here, which is usually exempted. Once you motorize something, the government definitely wants to get involved in regulating safety issues, and the primary reason, of course, is tax revenue and licensing revenue and all the rest. So this may or may not fly in France, but we're hoping that this doesn't discourage the adoption of this type of transportation. And then, of course, you have another ingredient here as well. I don't know too many people that wouldn't benefit from a human-powered vehicle bicycling in order to for the health benefits. So it'd be interesting to see how this eventually plays out. Scooters, e-bikes, a lot of these are, of course, now going to be under consideration as they begin to proliferate. You know, the other day, I zip around, by the way, on an e-scooter between the buildings here. We have 7 commercial buildings in the compound. And if I was to walk, I would spend a majority of my day walking. Mm-hmm. So I have a little in-wheel motor scooter that I scoot around in. And the other day, I'm scooting down the street, and a City of Phoenix police car is coming toward me, and I'm going, uh-oh. Was this a bad choice at this point in time? Is he going to pull me over and say that I can't be on the roadway, that these are only good for what, sidewalk, and are they even allowed there? I'm not really sure. Do you know?
As far as I know, they fall underneath any moving vehicle laws because the power of the motor is going to be too small. Okay. And so it's not unlike having the little bird scooters or other rental scooters that we see in some places here in the valley.
I think it has to go over 20 miles an hour or something too. If it's like an electric bike, before you have to start worrying. Yeah,
there's motor size and there's top speed. Okay. So I don't think it's something that you'd have to worry about, but it's very interesting question there.
It would have been miserable if I got pulled over. And license and registration, please.
You know, the e-bikes, they're making quite inroads here in the U.S. as well. Mm-hmm. If you go to your bicycle shop here in the U.S., Trek, Cannondale, the larger bike makers here in the United States do all have options for e-bikes, and for them they put out the wattage that the bicycle can put out. Mm-hmm. So a bicycle that has maximum wattage output, for example, of 475 watts. Okay, well, that's roughly the power that a professional cyclist can produce when he's riding down the road at 30 miles an hour.
Interesting. My scooter, by the way, Jesse, will do 25 miles an hour.
25? Yeah. Ooh, we got to worry there. So, and speaking of in-wheel, can you read that top question there?
Yeah. Oh, okay. YouTube, Pablo Damon. What is happening with the Michelin Active Wheel?
Now that is an old in-wheel motor. Mm-hmm. And so that combined with one of the car companies here, Electric, we have, they're on 19th Ave, just down the street. So where you can reach out to them and maybe set up another in-wheel motor interview and also talk about that active wheel. I think that's an in-wheel motor that was developed by Michelin, I think, over 10 years ago.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, as we noticed when we did our video on in-wheel motors, those of you interested, by the way, on TikTok, we do have an in-wheel motor video that came out about 2-3 weeks ago. What was curious to us or fascinating was in 1901, Porsche actually had in-wheel motors on one of their vehicles.
Wow.
22 years ago, So they've been around for a while. The technology still needs to improve. There are unsprung weight issues, putting that much weight into the unsprung portions of a vehicle. And then, of course, road hazards, or if you get into an accident, the concern was, well, now you've destroyed a motor, versus just a control arm and a tire,
Sure.
But it definitely, as we demonstrated in our video, standing underneath a Tesla Roadster, I pointed to where the motor was, the transition into the transaxle, lots of gears in there, then the output to some half shafts that had 4 UV joints on it before any of that kinetic energy from the motor ever reached the wheels. So there's definitely an efficiency gain, and of course a weight reduction because of all of this extra hardware that now gets eliminated, drive shaft, drivetrain reductions.
Here's a screenshot of that Michelin Active Wheel, and then it's got all the components in there that we talked about in that video. So we can do more research on this specific application, and then here's the electric bikes that we'll reach out to and possibly do a little more expansive talk on electric scooters, electric bikes, and how that's kind of taken off here, because this is right in our backyard.
Yeah, and it is definitely taking off. It's definitely becoming a thing.
So TikTok Smuggler, welcome. By the way, they started installing solar-powered EV charging stations at the base. Beam is the brand. We reported a couple of weeks ago that a Navy base actually survived a power outage for a couple of days because they had DC storage and they had a solar installation, and they were able to ride through it and basically had their own utility.
Mm-hmm. On Instagram, Oakshade104 has a silly question. Suppose I'm at a party. If I get in the back seat and the car self-drives and then gets pulled over, the car drove, right?
What we're saying is, at this party, there may have been more than one drink involved.
Very possible.
So who is going to get the DUI at this point? Well, it again goes back to the earlier question. The liability shifts. If you're a passenger in a car and someone's speeding, the passengers don't get the ticket. Mm-hmm. So this is posing some interesting legal questions in the future regarding liability.
I do think it's going to be either the manufacturer of the car or the person who purchased the car from the manufacturer and has purchased the right to have that car be on the road.
I think I just found one of the best new answers to the sunglass question. So TikTok, Steve Areno, welcome by the way, asks, why always the sunglasses? Smuggler, who's also one of our current audience members, he says they are part of the witness protection program.
That's another good one.
So Scott Gruber from YouTube, does your electric bike have regenerative braking? Do any electric bikes have it?
You might be talking about your scooter.
The scooter, yeah. I don't know, and that's a great question. When I let off the accelerator, it does slow down some, and then I have a handbrake. But you would think that if it was an EV-based transportation method, regen wouldn't be that hard to put in it. Now, is it necessary for a scooter that, I probably only use 10% of the battery each day because I charge it and I leave it charged and plugged in. Richard, who's a motorcycle, one of our social media guys, who's been fascinated by EV motorcycles. Do you know anything about regen with motorcycles?
I have not looked into that just yet. I feel like regen braking on a motorcycle will be a little bit more hostile. Just because, if you put the regen on the rear brake or on the rear tire, you could slide out just by letting off the gas or accelerator. In the front, you could run into high siding or low siding if you're just trying to let off the throttle when you're going on a turn.
Good point. So you really need a controlled method for both wheels, and the AI at this point may not be sophisticated enough to handle what a human can do with a motorcycle under various conditions.
Correct.
Yeah. On the bicycle world, that's something we'll have to research as well. I believe that they do have regenerative braking for batteries on the electric bicycles that we, again, I'm going to refer back to Trek or Cannondale or some of the US-made brands. But that's something we'd have to research to find out more about.
Okay. Well, we have a news item. Lucid. Earnings came out, and they fell short of analysts' expectations. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yes, they definitely did fall short. They produced fewer cars than analysts had expected. I think it was the shipment of cars that was the real issue for investors, and the drop in orders as well was a real kind of a bugaboo for the investors. Stock has been getting pounded. As of this morning, it was down to about $8.25 again, and just as recently as a couple days ago, it was up in the $11 range.
Right.
Lucid did show a loss on earnings. I believe it was something like, if you fact check me here, something about 60 or so cents per share, as opposed to about 3 times that last year.
Yeah, the actual stats were that their net loss narrowed to $472 million, or 28 cents a share, from a loss of 1.05 billion, or 64 cents per share a year earlier.
So a year ago it was 64. Yeah. This year it was about 28 cents a share. In my opinion, I'm still bullish on the whole idea of Lucid. They've got some challenges ahead of them, not from Tesla necessarily. I know they're positioning themselves as a competitor to Tesla. I know that they make one of the very best cars, most luxurious cars in the marketplace right now. A year ago, you did not have the extra 5 or 6 brands that are starting to hit the roads that you have now. And yet at the same time, the Saudi Arabian government still has their pending order for 100,000 vehicles that they want Lucid to make for them. Now, the Saudis are the biggest investors in Lucid, obviously, but that $100,000 order that they have in their back pocket that was not part of the reported reservations and orders is going to do a lot to give them tailwinds to propel them forward.
100,000 vehicle order, right?
Yeah, it's a 100,000 vehicle order. Mm-hmm. The main investor concerns, of course, were that the reservations for Lucid Airs have gone down, that the production was only about half of what investors thought they would be able to see for 2023. Lucid said that they were going to produce somewhere between 10 and 14,000 vehicles this year. Investors were hoping that they were going to be more in the 25,000 range.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Now,
my opinion also. I'm bullish on Lucid. Again, the Saudis being involved, it's their second act. They're not going to let this fail.
By all means. They have their second fabrication unit still under construction in Casa Grande. That goes online, I believe it's either late 2024 or early 2025, and that's going to basically triple their production capacity as well.
Right. So during
real quick, we have to disclose, we are not financial advisors. This is not financial advice. None of us here are licensed, so take everything we say with a grain of salt, nor is this any kind of instruction to invest.
Not at all. Not at all.
Thank you, Richard.
Yes.
Yeah, it's our own personal opinions, and leave it at just that.
So Elon Musk was recently quoted. It's probably a Twitter quote because it's a one-sentence type quote, but I love this one. He says, "We specialize in making the impossible merely late."
I love that quote. You know, the IT quote, I come from a technology background. The IT quote that I have heard, and I always tell my guys, Jesse will know this, difficult, you can do right away. Impossible takes a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yep. Very true.
So Elon apparently, or Tesla talked about opening a global engineering headquarters in, guess where? Palo Alto. It sounds like Elon may be having second thoughts about this love-hate relationship with California. And they actually ended up setting up the global engineering headquarters in Palo Alto at the old HP site. They're moving into the former headquarters of Hewlett-Packard in Palo Alto, which of course is a legendary, iconic site. And they expect 1,400 employees to work at this Hanover Street location. The governor of California was involved, Newsom, and he made some concessions. He said, the world we invented is now competing against us, and you can't rest on your laurels. And this may have been in response to something that, that Elon said when he, in a huff, relocated to Texas. And he likened California at that time to a sports team that had rested on its laurels after a winning streak, saying they do tend to get a little complacent, a little entitled, and then they don't win the championships anymore. So it looks like there's a conciliatory tone that's evolving here, and Tesla is beginning to reinvest in California. Of course, they have 47,000 employees in Fremont, so it's not that they've pulled out entirely. But it's good to see that you know, Silicon Valley is again being focused, at least by Tesla, for further development. There's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of intellectual property and that resides in you know, the individuals there. A lot of good universities, Stanford, for example. So it's a great place where good ideas can come out of.
Yeah, you know, you've really hit on it. There are a few places in this world that have the kind of talent that exists right now in the Silicon Valley area. Also, I will bet money that it is truly a love-hate relationship that's in the love cycle right now.
Guys, just so you know, we are at 1 hour.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Why don't we get to a couple questions?
Sure.
Pablo Damon from YouTube says, I'd love to add active wheels to the front of my Class B motorhome. It would make it a four-wheel drive for a little while if needed.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yep, go watch our video on in-wheel motors. Just came out a couple weeks ago. Yep.
And then on YouTube Shorts, Palo asks, does Tesla use off-the-shelf motor parts?
You know, any manufacturer does. For example, I owned a Ferrari for years. Now, you could get a water pump from Ferrari for $1,200, or you could go down to your local VW dealer and buy the same thing for $120. It came off the same assembly line. It doesn't make sense for an auto manufacturer to reinvent the wheel for common items like windshield wiper motors and you know, even seals and things like that. So smart design typically looks in the industry to see what's being mass produced and then brings that into the bill of materials. It also helps lower the cost of the product that you're making, because if you try to make anything in small run quantities, the price just soars tremendously.
Well, it's just like when Tesla made their original Roadster, they built it on a Lotus Elise frame. So Smuggler from TikTok comments again, Richard, you need sunglasses.
Yeah, TikTok can kind of see him a little bit over there. Make sure.
Your credibility is not quite there, Richard. There we go. All right.
There we go.
It is also worth noting that Smuggler is pretty much solely responsible for the 3,000 likes that we have on TikTok right now.
Thank you. So we work with Tesla, and being under NDA, we can't really disclose the extent or the level that we work with them, but I found this fascinating. I got an email yesterday, and we're working with the Lathrop Remanufacturing Center. And one of the people that we're working with there, one of the managers said, hey, Gruber, thanks for the detailed introduction. It seems you are very popular here in the reman side, the remanufacturing side of Tesla. The type of things that we provide for them working on the Tesla Roadster, for example, is we see a lot of age-related issues with these cars that Tesla would not normally see.
Right.
We've got over 50 Tesla model or Tesla Roadsters in the shop right now. And because of the extensive work that we do and the fact that we have to troubleshoot right down to component level, we have to find root cause. In fact, Mark is involved in an engineering problem right now with the battery pack. It reveals to us the aging issues with their vehicles, and we always share that with Tesla, either through tech tips or you know, direct email. So again, getting a little bit of love from Tesla is always a good thing that we find very rewarding. Thank you.
We look forward to partnering with Tesla in the future on and helping to solve these problems too that we come across. So,
a quick question from TikTok. Trumpster, welcome. Can a P85 go to a 90 kW pack? Yeah, we actually addressed that earlier, but we have a video out there on YouTube that talks about the what you can transition to. And 85 to 90 is quite normal. That's within the range. 40, 50, 60, 70, all of those, you can go to 90 kW. You can't go to 100 kW. And anyway, the video is very informative. I would suggest watching that.
by all means. Warren Raven has a similar question to that, asking if you can add a front motor to the 2014 Model S. That's a new question that I had not heard, plus switch the 60 for a 90. Yes, we know that the 60 can be switched out for the 90. The car is able to handle that mechanically. Can you address adding the front motor?
Sure. You know, in those kinds of deviations to a vehicle. Anything is possible. The question is it cost effective? And you know, if you want to go all-wheel drive, it's going to be infinitely cheaper to just simply replace the vehicle than to try to integrate and modify an existing vehicle. The expense involved there far outweighs just simply replacing the vehicle. Now, having said that, if you have a collectible vehicle and you've got Tesla Roadster VIN number 3, Founders number 3, and you want to do a modification, yeah, swapping a vehicle is not going to solve or you know, answer your need or your desire. So in that case, it would be worth the expense of integrating or changing something.
Sure, but you're good. You've made a perfect point. On a 2014 Model S, you're not talking about one of the first VIN numbers. It probably would be more economical by far to simply sell that 2014, get another similar model year, 2014, 2015, that has the dual motor already in it. You probably end up a lot less expensive than it would be just to put another motor into a 2014.
Sure. We have what's called now an optional question from YouTube Shorts, from Palo. He asks, has a battery pack ever thermal runaway on you? Yes, absolutely. In 2017, in fact, May 5th, my daughter's birthday, I remember it well, we were overcharging a Tesla Roadster battery, a 1,000-pound cube of battery mass with 6,831 cells in it. The pack had come from a Tesla service center in Hawaii, and we were attempting to recover it. In 2017, there was no documentation available. We had not yet developed any procedures, protocols, and we were basically doing experimental work at that time.
Right.
Watching it carefully, but apparently not carefully enough, because one Friday afternoon the pack caught fire, and we quickly learned how devastating a lithium-ion fire can be. Within 5 or 10 minutes, an 8-foot flame was shooting out the top of that battery. It ignited the roof structure of our commercial building, and by the time the fire department showed up 15, 20 minutes later or so, it had begun to spread throughout the building, and the fire department ended up throwing water on it, and it just laughed at them. Then they tried foam, then they tried CO2, and they finally said, you know, we can't get a hold of Tesla. Well, it was after 5 o'clock. First of all, and we have no idea how to fight this. Unless you guys have some ideas, we're going to walk away, step away, and just let this building torch until it gets done burning. So yes, we have had a pack thermal runaway. Today, we are much wiser. We are actually completing now a battery bunker, which should be done within the next month or so, which is where all of the battery work will take place, external from the main building, with a lot of protection built into it. So yeah, we are well versed and fully aware of the dangers of lithium-ion.
Most definitely. While we haven't had any other fires that can be attributed to any thermal runaway or anything of that sort, we know that that's always a risk, and the battery bunker continues to be just the next step in our evolution as we've learned how to work with these batteries.
And as, by the way, we are developing this third building that we have now, we've been videotaping the entire process, and we've had a lot of companies around the world come to us and say, how do you build an EV repair facility? We're going to publicize all of that. It will be free, and we will share our experiences with you, our best practices, and make sure that other people don't have these kinds of disasters.
Palo, you're very welcome. Glad that we were able to answer your question on the channel right away. And we agree, the packs can get scary. And so it says he has seen some vids on YouTube. It's a frightening thing when that kind of thing happens. And it does not happen just with lithium-ion, by the way. It can happen with lead-acid batteries. We have seen that with the Gruber Power Services, on the Gruber Power Services side of the business, where clients have overcharged their batteries in UPS systems, and I've seen the same type of thing. Thermal runaway is definitely a real danger.
Mm-hmm. Well, it looks like we're wrapping up our show at this point. If you have any final last-minute questions you want to shoot our way, the screen's still up. We can take a look at them.
And Spotify?
Jesse, why don't you tell us about Spotify? You're the pro.
Yeah, guys, so we are over on Spotify, Gruber Morning Show. You can do audio only, or you can do video there. We have all the episodes there, and we're uploading them usually within the same day now as well. It would help us a lot to get to our next monetization goal if we can get up to the 100 mark on followers over there. So check us out on Spotify.
Thank you, Jesse. And I want to thank our audience. It's always a pleasure that you join us on these podcasts. Today is Thursday, so the next one will be Tuesday next week at 8:30. And we will be available to, again, answer questions and look forward to seeing you all again.
It's always a privilege to be here. Thank you guys for your time.